They say grief has a way of bringing people together. But when I watched my cousin smirk at my grandmother's funeral while I clutched a wrinkled envelope in my hands, I realized grief in my family didn't unite, it divided. That envelope was supposed to be my inheritance. While they were handed a penthouse, a private jet, and a factory worth more than $37 million, I got a plane ticket. A single, one-way plane ticket to Italy. And the thing is, I still went. Because I knew Nana. She never did anything without a reason. Before I dive in, let me just say this. These stories take hours of work. Writing, editing, piecing together every detail so you can sit back and enjoy the drama. So if you like hearing how I turn betrayal into revenge, go ahead and subscribe. It's free for you, but it makes all the late nights worth it. Anyway, back to the story. My name's Isabella, but most people call me Bella. I'm 29, born and raised in Boston, though I've been living in New York City the last few years, working as a paralegal. I've always been the quiet one in the family, the type who'd rather sip coffee at a small shop than shout over music in a nightclub. My grandmother, Nana, understood me in a way no one else in the family ever did. She came to the U.S. from Florence in the 1960s with nothing but a sewing machine and built Rossi Textiles into a multi-million-dollar company. She was strong, brilliant, maybe a little eccentric, but to me she was the woman who taught me how to make pasta from scratch and slip me chocolates when my parents weren't looking. My cousins, Marcus, Vanessa, and Anthony, were the opposite of me. Marcus, the eldest, strutted through life expecting the world to bend for him. Vanessa lived for Instagram likes, parading around in designer outfits she hadn't paid for herself. Anthony was slick-talking but allergic to actual work. They were the favorites, spoiled by Nana's wealth and flaunting it like their birthright. Even at family gatherings in Providence or New Haven, they'd make little digs to remind me I didn't belong. The funeral was surreal. Nana's casket was draped with white lilies, her favorite, while the priest droned on. But instead of mourning, my cousins whispered about who would get what. "The jet's mine," Marcus muttered. "She promised me the penthouse," Vanessa hissed back. I clenched my fist, disgusted, but said nothing. Then the lawyer, Mr. Goldman, began reading the will. Jet to Marcus, penthouse to Vanessa, factory to Anthony, and then finally my name. My chest tightened as he slid a small, wrinkled brown envelope across the table. My cousins were already snickering. I opened it with shaking hands and found a plane ticket. One way. Boston Logan to Florence, Italy. No letter. No explanation. Just that. Their laughter was immediate. Marcus leaned over and whispered, "Guess Nana thought you needed a vacation, Bella." Vanessa pretended to dab her eyes and said, "Hope Italy takes plane tickets as rent money." My face burned, humiliation clawing at me. But instead of breaking down, I tucked the ticket back into the envelope, looked each of them in the eye, and said, "You might want to be careful laughing too soon." Nana never played games. She didn't plan to win. Their smirks faltered just slightly. That was enough for me. I stood, walked out, and didn't look back. That night in my tiny Queens apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ticket. Florence, Nana's home. She used to tell me stories of playing in the streets there, of the church bells ringing at noon, of secrets tucked between cobblestones. Nana never left things to chance. If she wanted me in Florence, there was a reason. And maybe, just maybe, that reason was bigger than any penthouse or private jet. By dawn, my decision was made. I packed a small suitcase, requested time off work, and booked myself on that flight. My cousins could gloat over their millions. I was chasing something they'd never understand, Nana's legacy. The plane ride was a blur of nerves and excitement. As we touched down in Florence, my stomach knotted. I stepped into the arrivals hall, scanning the crowd, and then I saw him, a driver in a crisp black suit, holding up a sign with my name. Isabella Rossi. I walked over cautiously, my heart pounding. "That's me," I said. He gave me a small, polite smile, leaned in, and spoke 8 words that made my jaw drop. The driver's voice was calm, almost casual, but those 8 words knocked the air right out of me. He said, "Your grandmother left you the real inheritance." For a second, I just stood there, staring at him. My heart skipped. My cousins had paraded out of that lawyer's office flaunting their shiny new fortunes, laughing at my plane ticket prize, and here was this stranger in Florence telling me that none of that mattered, that the real inheritance was waiting for me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice shaking. But the driver, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a face that looked carved from stone, only smiled slightly and gestured toward the sleek black Mercedes parked outside. The ride from the airport was a blur. Florence looked exactly how Nana had described it. Terracotta rooftops glowing under the afternoon sun, cobblestone streets weaving between ancient buildings, church bells ringing as though the entire city had been frozen in time. My mind raced. What could she have left me here? Another business? A house? Or was this just some elaborate trick, a cruel way of reminding me how different I was from the rest of the family? The driver finally pulled up to a tall iron gate on the edge of the city. Behind it was a sprawling villa, the kind you only see in movies, arched windows, ivy crawling up the walls, and olive trees stretching as far as I could see. He parked, stepped out, and opened my door. "Welcome home, Signorina Rossi," he said, bowing his head slightly. Home. The word made my chest ache. I followed him up the stone steps, every footfall echoing in my ears. Inside, the villa smelled faintly of lemon oil and fresh bread. Sunlight poured through tall windows, illuminating a grand staircase and walls lined with framed photographs. I froze when I saw them. They weren't just family photos, they were our family. My father as a boy, standing beside Nana. My cousins as children, frowning in stiff formal portraits. And me. There were more photos of me with Nana than of anyone else. The two of us in her Boston kitchen, rolling out pasta dough. Me holding up a sewing project she'd taught me. Her arms wrapped around me like I was the center of her world. The driver led me into a study where an envelope sat waiting on the desk. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter in Nana's familiar looping script. "Cara Isabella," it began. "If you are reading this, then you have already discovered the truth. The others think they inherited my wealth. What they do not understand is that true wealth is not measured in money or possessions. It is measured in trust. And I trusted only you." I sat down hard in the leather chair, clutching the letter as tears blurred my vision. She had known exactly what would happen, how my cousins would gloat, how I would feel humiliated. She had planned this moment down to the last detail. The letter went on to explain that the villa, the surrounding land, and a bank account in my name containing more than I could even wrap my head around were all mine. But that wasn't even the shocking part. Nana hinted at something else. Something hidden. She wrote, "Within these walls lies the key to everything. But you must be patient, Bella. Patience will give you the revenge you deserve." I dropped the letter onto the desk, my pulse pounding. Revenge? Nana had known how badly my cousins would treat me. She had known they would sneer, laugh, and belittle me. And she had prepared me, not with anger, but with a plan. The driver, silent until now, finally spoke. "Your grandmother said you would need help. I will be here when you are ready." He gave me a respectful nod and left me alone in the study. I looked around at the towering bookshelves, the gleaming mahogany desk, the heavy velvet curtains framing the window. Outside, the olive grove shimmered in the fading light. I should have felt overwhelmed, but instead, a slow smile spread across my face. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt chosen. But here's the thing. Being chosen came with responsibility. And as I stared at that letter, I realized something important. Nana hadn't just left me an inheritance. She'd left me a mission. If you were in my shoes, would you have trusted the letter? Or would you have stormed back to Boston and confronted your cousins right away? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. And with that thought swirling in my mind, I folded the letter carefully and locked the study door behind me. Because whatever Nana had set in motion, it was only just beginning. The villa creaked softly that first night, as if it were alive, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets to me. After the driver left me alone in the study with Nana's letter, I sat for what felt like hours, staring at the looping script, tracing each curve of her handwriting with my finger. I could hear her voice in every line. She wasn't a sentimental woman, but she had a way of saying things that stayed with you, like little riddles that only made sense years later. Within these walls lies the key to everything. But you must be patient, Bella. Patience will give you the revenge you deserve. Revenge. That word clung to me. My cousins were in New York, toasting their new fortunes, probably mocking me over cocktails in Marcus's jet or lounging in Vanessa's penthouse. I could picture it so clearly. The smugness, the gloating, the way they'd tell the story to anyone who would listen. Bella got a plane ticket while we got millions. But Nana had played them. I just didn't know how yet. I wandered the villa that night with the letter clutched in my hand. The place felt impossibly large, each room echoing with a kind of lonely grandeur. The kitchen was big enough to host a restaurant, with copper pots hanging from a rack and a massive stone oven built into the wall. The dining room stretched longer than my entire queen's apartment, with a table that could seat 20. Upstairs, the bedroom smelled faintly of lavender, the sheets crisp and untouched. And everywhere, on the walls, the mantels, the bookshelves, were photographs of Nana. Sometimes alone, sometimes with family, but most often with me. That detail struck me again and again. Out of all the grandchildren, I was the one she'd chosen to immortalize on her walls. There was one photo of us in particular that stopped me cold. I must have been about 10, sitting on her lap in her Boston kitchen. Flour on my nose, both of us laughing. She framed it in gold and placed it in the center of the upstairs hall like it was the crown jewel. I touched the glass and whispered, "What did you leave me, Nana?" Sleep didn't come easily, but eventually exhaustion won. I curled up in one of the guest rooms and drifted into uneasy dreams filled with spinning keys and locked doors. The next morning, the driver was waiting for me in the kitchen with fresh bread and a pot of coffee. I hadn't even realized he lived here, but apparently he did. His name, I learned, was Lorenzo. He told me Nana had hired him decades ago, and he'd stayed on not just as a driver, but as her caretaker, her confidant. He spoke in a calm, measured way, with that old-world Italian dignity that made you feel small, but safe at the same time. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman," he said, pouring coffee into a delicate porcelain cup. "She prepared for everything, even this." I stared at him. She knew my cousins would humiliate me. Lorenzo's lips twitched in a small smile. She counted on it. I leaned back, the bitter coffee warming my throat. But what did she mean about a key? She said it's within these walls. Lorenzo folded his hands. "That is not for me to say. She left instructions for you. You must find them when you are ready." I wanted to shake him, demand answers, but there was something in his eyes that stopped me. He wasn't being cryptic to annoy me. He was protecting her wishes. So I spent the next few days exploring. The villa became my labyrinth. Every morning I'd walk the halls, studying the paintings, the books, the furniture, looking for anything that felt out of place. I opened drawers, tapped on walls, flipped through journals. At first, nothing. But then on the fourth day, something shifted. I was in the library, a cavernous room with shelves stretching to the ceiling, when I noticed a book that didn't belong. It was newer, glossier than the others, tucked awkwardly between two dusty encyclopedias. I pulled it down and flipped it open. The pages had been hollowed out. Inside, there was a small brass key. My breath caught. I turned the key over in my hands, the metal warm from the sunlight streaming through the window. Tied to it with a ribbon was a slip of paper with 3 words in Nana's handwriting: "Start with love." I sat down hard in the leather armchair, clutching the key. Start with love. What did that mean? Was it symbolic, love as in memories, family, history, or literal? Was there a door, a chest, something in the villa marked with the word love? I searched the house from top to bottom. Nothing. No obvious lock. No chest. No sign of the word love anywhere. By midnight, I was pacing the library floor in frustration. That's when Lorenzo appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the key dangling from my fingers and nodded as if to himself. "She wanted you to find it," he said softly. "Do you know what it's for?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "Your grandmother told me only this. When Bella finds the key, she will also find herself." Not exactly helpful. But then he added, "Perhaps you are searching too hard. Sometimes love hides in plain sight." I lay awake half the night, turning his words over and over. By dawn, I had an idea. I raced to the upstairs hall, to the photograph of me and Nana in the kitchen. Love. That's what it represented. Pure, simple love. I lifted the frame from the wall and examined it closely. It was heavier than it should have been. My fingers probed the back until I found a hidden latch. My heart hammered as I slid it open. Inside was a tiny lock. Hands trembling, I slipped the brass key into the slot. It turned with a satisfying click. The frame popped open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was another envelope. My throat went dry as I pulled it out. On the front, in Nana's handwriting, were 4 words that sent shivers down my spine. For Bella's eyes only. The letter weighed heavy in my pocket all day, like it was burning a hole through the fabric of my jeans. Beneath this house lies something even they could not imagine. Nana's words circled in my head on repeat. Every step I took through the villa felt different now, like I was walking on top of a secret, my feet tapping above answers that refused to show themselves. After Lorenzo brought me breakfast that morning, fluffy eggs with herbs, bread so fresh it was still warm, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead, I finally asked him directly, "Lorenzo, is there a cellar? A basement? Anything like that?" He hesitated, his eyes narrowing slightly, like he was weighing loyalty to my grandmother against loyalty to me. Finally, he nodded. "There is a wine cellar. But whether it is what you are searching for," his voice trailed off. My pulse quickened. "Show me." He led me down a narrow stone staircase at the back of the villa. The air grew cooler with each step, and the scent of dust and earth clung to my skin. At the bottom, a heavy oak door groaned as Lorenzo pushed it open, revealing rows upon rows of wine racks, bottles gleaming in the dim light. I walked slowly through the cellar, running my hands along the bottles, the stone walls, the uneven floor. Nothing seemed unusual, but the letter hadn't been vague by accident. Nana had hidden something here. I was sure of it. For hours I searched, tapping walls, crouching low, shining my phone flashlight into every shadow. Finally, in the farthest corner of the cellar, behind a rack of dusty bottles, I noticed something strange. The stones there didn't quite match. They were newer, smoother, almost like a patchwork against the centuries-old wall. "Help me move this," I said breathlessly. Lorenzo didn't ask questions. Together we slid the wine rack aside, revealing the mismatched stone. Up close, I saw a small iron keyhole set into the wall. My hand shot to my pocket. The brass key. It slid in perfectly. With a grinding sound that echoed in my bones, the stones shifted. A hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I turned to Lorenzo. His expression was unreadable. "This is it," I whispered. He gave a single nod. "Be careful, Signorina." The passage smelled of damp earth and secrets long buried. I pulled out my phone, its flashlight slicing through the blackness. The walls were rough stone, the ceiling low enough that I had to duck, slightly. My footsteps echoed, mixing with the drip-drip of unseen water. After what felt like forever, the tunnel opened into a chamber. I froze. It wasn't some dusty storage room. It was a vault. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls. Stacks of boxes filled with documents towered almost to the ceiling. And in the center stood a heavy table covered in ledgers, maps, and sealed envelopes. I stepped forward slowly, my hand trembling as I lifted the top ledger. My eyes widened as I scanned the pages. It wasn't wine records. It wasn't family keepsakes. It was business. Rossi Textiles' real business. Hidden accounts. Offshore investments. Patents. Shareholder agreements. My grandmother hadn't just run a textile company. She had controlled an empire behind the scenes. An empire she'd hidden from everyone, except me. One folder was marked with my name. I opened it with shaking hands and found deeds to properties across Europe and the U.S. Warehouses, factories, offices. All of them signed over to me. I staggered back, pressing a hand to my mouth. This wasn't an inheritance. It was power. Nana had left me scraps while my cousins got millions. She had given me the foundation of everything. She had left them the glittering shells, but the beating heart of the Rossi legacy, the infrastructure, the control, the future was mine. My laugh came out shaky, almost hysterical. "They think they won," I whispered. They have no idea. Lorenzo stepped into the chamber behind me, his gaze sweeping over the vault like he'd seen it all before. She wanted you to understand first, he said softly. Wealth can be squandered, but knowledge, control, those cannot be stolen so easily. I sank into the chair at the table, flipping through more files. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. My cousins had been handed shiny toys, but those toys were meaningless without the machinery that kept them running. The jet? Worthless without the company's private accounts funding its upkeep. The penthouse? Expensive without steady income. The factory? Useless if you didn't know about the secret patents and contracts Nana had locked down under my name. It was like watching dominoes line up in my head. Nana had engineered it perfectly. She had set them up to fail and set me up to rise. But my triumph was cut short by a single, chilling thought. If I had all of this, what was I supposed to do with it? The answer came 2 nights later. I was in the study, surrounded by papers I'd dragged up from the vault when my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus lit up the screen. Hope you're enjoying your little Italian vacation, Bella. Thought you should know, we're selling the factory. Don't worry, we'll toast you with the profits. My stomach dropped. Sell the factory? The Rossi factory? That factory wasn't just a building. It was part of the empire Nana had hidden, tied to the patents and contracts in the vault. If they sold it off recklessly, it could unravel everything. For the first time since I arrived in Florence, I felt a spark of anger strong enough to burn. My cousins weren't just greedy. They were dangerous in their stupidity. And if I didn't act soon, they'd destroy everything Nana had built. I looked down at the documents spread across the desk. Power, leverage, secrets. I had all the tools I needed. That night, I made myself a promise. If they wanted to play games with Nana's legacy, then fine. I'd play, but I wouldn't just win. I'd make sure they never forgot the mistake of underestimating me. For days after finding the vault, I couldn't stop pacing the villa. Every corner I turned, every door I opened, it all felt different now that I knew what lay beneath. The villa wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of secrets. And those secrets gave me power my cousins couldn't even dream of. But with power came decisions. And decisions had consequences. Marcus's smug text about selling the factory replayed in my head on loop. I could practically hear his laughter as he typed it. My cousins thought they were kings and queens, divvying up Nana's fortune like it was candy. They had no idea that the fortune they'd been handed was made of sugar glass. It looked impressive, but it couldn't last. Still, I couldn't just march into New York, slam a file on the table, and scream, surprise. It's mine. That would have been too easy. Too messy. And honestly, too merciful. Nana's voice lingered in my memory. Patience, Bella. Patience will give you the revenge you deserve. So I sat down in the study, spread the vault documents across the desk, and started to map out the web of Rossi textiles. And my God, what a web it was. Nana had left trails everywhere, shell companies, hidden accounts, legal clauses buried so deep in contracts that even a trained attorney would miss them. My paralegal brain lit up like fireworks as I pieced it all together. Here's what I found. Marcus technically inherited the jet, but the trust that funded its maintenance and fuel, in my name. Without my approval, that jet would be nothing but a shiny metal lawn ornament. Vanessa got the penthouse. Beautiful, expensive, and bleeding money. The property taxes alone were astronomical. I found records in the vault showing that Nana had prepaid those taxes for 5 years. But the 6th year was looming, and Vanessa had no income of her own to cover it. And Anthony with the factory? That was the most delicious discovery. He didn't inherit Rossi Textiles, not really. What he inherited was the building, the land, the machines, the staff contracts. They were technically tied to a corporation Nana had secretly restructured months before her death. Guess whose name was listed as majority shareholder? Mine. I laughed so hard I had to wipe tears from my eyes. Nana had played a masterclass in inheritance chess, and I was her queen piece, waiting quietly until it was time to strike. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about winning. It's about timing. It's about making them feel the fall before they hit the ground. So I made a plan. Step 1, information. I needed to know what my cousins were doing with their gifts. Marcus with his jet, Vanessa with her penthouse, Anthony with the factory. And I had the perfect tool for that: social media. My cousins couldn't resist broadcasting their every move. Marcus posted Instagram stories from the jet, sipping champagne while bragging about his new toy. Vanessa did photo shoots in the penthouse, pretending it was hers all along. And Anthony? He was on LinkedIn, announcing himself as CEO of Rossi Textiles. I nearly spit out my coffee when I read that. CEO of what, exactly? He didn't even own the company. He owned a building. Step 2, pressure. I wasn't going to blow up their lies all at once. No, that would have been too merciful. Instead, I was going to let them build their castles of arrogance higher and higher. So when I finally pulled the rug out, the fall would shatter them. I started with Marcus. Quietly, I had Lorenzo connect me with one of Nana's old accountants in Milan. The man remembered me from when I was younger, tagging along to meetings with Nana. She trusted you more than anyone, he said over espresso at a small cafe near the Duomo. Together, we combed through the financial structures tied to the jet. It turned out the trust that paid for its upkeep was due for a renewal in 6 months. Renewal required my signature. Without it, the jet would be grounded indefinitely. Next came Vanessa. Oh, sweet, shallow Vanessa. Through the vault documents, I found the property tax records on the penthouse. The prepaid period ended in 8 months. After that, the city of New York would come knocking. I could almost see it now. Her sitting on marble floors surrounded by designer handbags, suddenly realizing she couldn't even keep the lights on. And Anthony, my favorite target of all, the CEO. The man who thought he'd inherited a $37 million factory. I dug deeper into the restructuring paperwork Nana had done. It was flawless, legally airtight. Anthony owned the building and the machines. But every contract, every employee, every supply chain, every patent, they all reported to me. He couldn't even sell a single spool of fabric without my approval. The beauty of it all made me dizzy. Nana hadn't just left me wealth. She'd left me the ability to destroy them with a single pen stroke. But I wasn't going to rush. I wasn't going to slam the hammer down, just yet. I wanted them to squirm, to live in their illusions for a little while longer, unaware of the storm brewing right under their noses. Still, the temptation was overwhelming. Every time Marcus posted another smug story on his jet, every time Vanessa flashed the penthouse view, every time Anthony updated his LinkedIn with another fake title, my fingers itched to reveal the truth. That night, sitting alone in the study with the vault papers spread around me, I whispered to the empty room, "You wanted patience, Nana. I'll give you patience. But when the time comes, I'll make them wish they'd never laughed at me." And here's where I'll pause for just a second. You have no idea how long it takes to weave all of this together. Researching details, threading the story so it actually makes sense, editing it until it flows, it takes hours. If you're enjoying the ride, the absolute best thank you can give me is to subscribe. Seriously, it keeps me going through the late nights and strong coffee. Now, let's get back to it. I started keeping a journal, writing down each step I planned to take. I called it Nana's Revenge Playbook. Page 1 listed my cousin's weaknesses: Marcus's arrogance, Vanessa's dependence, Anthony's incompetence. Page 2 listed the leverage I held over each of them. Page 3 was blank, waiting for the moves I'd make. But even with the perfect plan, revenge is never clean. There are always risks. And my first real test came sooner than I expected. One evening, while I was poring over contracts in the study, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Vanessa. She never called me. Ever. "Bella," she squealed when I picked up, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I was just thinking about you. How's Italy? Are you enjoying your little trip?" I could practically hear the smirk in her voice. "It's been enlightening," I said carefully. "Well, that's wonderful. Listen, we're throwing a little party at the penthouse next month. Sort of a celebration of our good fortune, you know? You have to come. Family only." My grip tightened on the phone. They wanted me there, to rub it in my face, to laugh at me in person. But instead of snapping, I smiled to myself. Of course, Vanessa. I wouldn't miss it, because now I had a stage. And when the curtain rose, I was going to make sure the whole world saw exactly who they really were. The invitation to Vanessa's penthouse party burned a hole in my mind. Every day that passed brought me closer to the moment I'd stand in front of them, not as the quiet, overlooked cousin they mocked, but as the woman holding the strings of their entire fortune. But patience. Nana's words still echoed in my ears. Patience meant savoring every step of the process. So I started with Marcus. Marcus had always been the golden boy of the family, the one who bragged the loudest, dressed the flashiest, smiled the widest. He was the kind of cousin who could wreck his car drunk driving and still convince everyone at Thanksgiving that he was the victim. When Nana's jet became his, it was like handing a spoiled child a box of fireworks. He lit it up for show, with zero idea how to handle the consequences. Instagram told me everything I needed to know. He posted constantly, lounging in the leather seats with a glass of champagne, posing on the stairs of the plane like some Hollywood celebrity, snapping pictures of skyline after skyline as he hopped from Miami to Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Each post was captioned with nonsense like, living large, family legacy strong. Haters gonna hate. And each time I just smiled, because I knew something he didn't. That jet wasn't his golden ticket. It was a ticking time bomb. The Milanese accountant I'd met with, Signor Bianchi, confirmed it. The trust that funded the jet's upkeep was in my name, and the next renewal date was just a few months away. Fuel, crew, docking fees. It all added up to hundreds of thousands every month. Without that trust, Marcus's shiny toy would be grounded. Still, I didn't want to cut him off cold. No, that would be too fast, too merciful. Instead, I decided to start pulling threads quietly, unraveling his ego bit by bit until he was dangling by nothing but pride. I made my first move with a phone call. Mr. Rossi? The maintenance director at the private airfield in Miami sounded confused when I introduced myself. But you're not listed as the owner of the jet. That's correct, I said smoothly, leaning back in Nana's leather study chair. My cousin Marcus is listed. However, the trust that pays for the upkeep and operation of that jet is legally under my control. I'm calling to inform you that effective immediately, all maintenance and fueling requests must be approved through me. There was a pause, then a quiet cough. I see. That explains quite a few things, such as, I asked, my curiosity piqued. The man hesitated. Mr. Marcus has been requesting extended flights, long hauls, private parties aboard the aircraft, but the invoices have been inconsistent. He's already several months behind on payment. My lips curled into a grin. Not anymore. From now on, send all invoices directly to me. And until I give approval, ground the plane. Do not allow a single flight to take off under his request. The maintenance director's sigh of relief was almost comical. Understood, Ms. Rossi. And just like that, the golden boy's wings were clipped. I didn't tell Marcus right away, of course. That would have spoiled the fun. Instead, I waited. I let him parade around on Instagram, planning his next big trip. I let him invite his entourage of freeloaders and wannabe influencers aboard, bragging about their upcoming weekend in Cancun. And then, on the day of the flight, I got the call. It was just past midnight in Florence when my phone buzzed. Marcus's number lit up the screen. I answered, suppressing a yawn. Bella, what the hell did you do? His voice was shrill with panic. They're telling me I can't fly my own jet. They said something about trust authorization and invoices going unpaid. What is going on? I let a moment of silence hang in the air, savoring it. Then I said, calm as ever, oh Marcus. Didn't anyone tell you? That jet isn't yours. Not really. You inherited the shell, but I inherited the lifeblood. Without my authorization, it doesn't move an inch. You're lying, he spat. Nana left it to me. She left you the frame, I said smoothly. But the trust? The money that keeps it in the sky. That's mine. And right now, I don't feel like approving a Cancun trip for you and your friends. I could practically hear him turning red through the phone. You can't just... I can. I cut in, my voice suddenly sharp. And I did. Consider this your first lesson, Marcus. You can post all the pictures you want, but when it comes to Nana's empire, I hold the keys. For a long time, he didn't speak. I could hear him breathing hard, muttering under his breath. Then, finally, he hissed, "This isn't over." "Oh, I certainly hope not," I said sweetly and hung up. The next morning, his Instagram was quiet. No stories, no smug posts, just silence. Lorenzo noticed my good mood at breakfast. He poured my coffee and raised an eyebrow. "You seem satisfied, Signorina." I chuckled. Marcus just learned what it feels like to be grounded. But as delicious as that victory was, I knew it was only the beginning. Vanessa and Anthony still had to learn their lessons. And for them, the fall would be even harder. That night, as I walked the villa's halls with Nana's letter in my pocket, I thought about the path ahead. Marcus was just one domino. The real satisfaction would come when all three fell in sequence, each one toppling into the next, until they were nothing but dust under my feet. Have you ever had someone underestimate you so badly? You couldn't wait for the moment they realized who they were really dealing with? Because that's exactly where I was standing, and let me tell you, the view was incredible. After grounding Marcus, I felt lighter, almost giddy, like I'd taken the first step onto a stage Nana had built just for me. But revenge wasn't a sprint, it was a carefully choreographed dance. And the next number belonged to Vanessa. Vanessa had always been obsessed with appearances. She was the cousin who'd spend 3 hours perfecting her makeup just to run errands. The one who measured her self-worth in Instagram likes and designer tags. While Marcus flaunted arrogance and Anthony clung to delusions of competence, Vanessa weaponized vanity. When she inherited the penthouse in Manhattan, she practically exploded with joy. That penthouse wasn't just real estate. It was a stage for her endless performance. The marble floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Empire State Building, the rooftop terrace overlooking Central Park. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of and everything she didn't deserve. I found myself scrolling her Instagram more than once, not out of envy, but out of fascination. She'd turned the penthouse into her personal runway. Daily posts showed her sipping lattes on the balcony, draped in silk robes that probably weren't even hers. She hosted intimate gatherings that looked more like full-blown raegers, complete with champagne towers and rented DJs. Each post was tagged with nauseating captions like "New York, New Queen." "Long live the Rossi legacy." And all I could think was, "Tick-tock, Vanessa. Tick-tock." Because what Vanessa didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that her penthouse came with a hidden poison pill. The property taxes had been prepaid by Nana, but only for 5 years. After that, the burden would fall squarely on Vanessa. And from the vault documents, I knew exactly how steep those taxes were. Let's just say, if she sold every handbag in her closet, she still wouldn't scratch the surface. At first, I planned to let her discover this on her own. To let the city of New York come knocking with its polite, but firm demands for payment. But then I realized, no, that wasn't good enough. This wasn't just about watching her crumble. It was about savoring the build-up. So I decided to turn the screws early. I started with a phone call to an old contact of Nana's in Manhattan, a real estate lawyer named Evelyn Carter. Evelyn had handled dozens of Rossi property deals over the years and remembered me immediately. "Isabella Rossi," she said warmly when I introduced myself. "I haven't heard your voice in years. How's Florence treating you?" "Better than I could have imagined," I said honestly. Then I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Evelyn, I need a favor. I need Vanessa to feel the weight of what she inherited." Evelyn chuckled knowingly. "Ah, the penthouse." "Exactly. How soon can we send her a formal notice of the upcoming property taxes?" "Technically, not for another 6 months," Evelyn said. "But I can draft a preliminary statement, something that outlines what's coming. A friendly heads up, so to speak. Would that do?" "That would be perfect," I said, my lips curling into a grin. Within a week, Vanessa received a thick envelope embossed with legal letterhead. Inside was a detailed breakdown of the property tax obligations she'd face once Nana's prepaid period expired. I wasn't there to see her face when she opened it, but I imagined it perfectly. The smug smile fading, the confusion setting in, the dawning horror as she realized that her shiny marble palace came with chains she couldn't afford to carry. Sure enough, her Instagram activity shifted almost overnight. The champagne towers disappeared. The raegers grew smaller. She started posting more quiet nights in and fewer rooftop parties. But my favorite part? The subtle hints of desperation. Anyone know a good brand collab manager? DM me. One caption read under a staged selfie in the penthouse kitchen. Another post advertised her style consulting services, which I knew was code for please pay me to shop for you because I'm broke. I savored every post like a fine glass of wine. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to squirm, yes, but I also wanted her to reach out, to need me, because that was when the power shift would become undeniable. And right on schedule, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Bella, she said, her voice thinner than usual. Hi. So, random question. You wouldn't happen to know anything about Nana's arrangements for the penthouse, would you? I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. Arrangements? Well, it's just, I got this weird letter from some lawyer about property taxes. Something about it being prepaid for 5 years? Do you know if that's true? Oh, yes, I said lightly, as if it were the most casual thing in the world. Nana prepaid them before she passed. Generous, isn't it? Yeah, but Vanessa's voice cracked. Bella, the letter said once the 5 years are up, it'll be hundreds of thousands every year. That can't be right, can it? I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her sweat. Then I said, it's right. She gasped. But how am I supposed to? Figure it out, I said smoothly. I'm sure you'll come up with something. Maybe one of your brand collabs will take off. The silence on the other end was delicious. Finally, Vanessa said, her voice small. You knew, didn't you? Oh, Vanessa, I said, my tone dripping with mock sympathy. Nana always said appearances can be deceiving. I guess you're starting to see what she meant. She hung up without another word. That night, I poured myself a glass of Chianti and toasted the darkened villa around me. Marcus was grounded. Vanessa was crumbling. And Anthony was next. But before I move on, let me pause here and ask you, if you were me, would you have warned Vanessa out of kindness? Or would you, like me, let her sweat it out until the very end? I'm curious. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because trust me, the best was still to come. If Marcus was the golden boy and Vanessa the queen of vanity, Anthony had always been the self-proclaimed brains of the family. Never mind that he barely scraped through college with a business degree he only earned thanks to Nana paying off professors. Never mind that he'd never run a lemonade stand, let alone a multi-million-dollar company. In his mind, he was destined to lead. So, of course, when he inherited the factory, he slapped CEO of Rossi Textiles on his LinkedIn profile within 24 hours. He even uploaded a new headshot, standing in front of the factory gates, arms crossed, chin up, as if he were posing for the cover of Forbes. Scrolling through his posts was pure comedy. He wrote long-winded essays about leadership principles he'd stolen word for word from self-help books. He posted pictures of himself shaking hands with workers who looked both confused and unimpressed. And he bragged endlessly about expanding the Rossi legacy into a new era. But the reality? Anthony didn't own Rossi Textiles. Not the employees, not the patents, not the contracts. He owned the building, the shell, and I owned everything inside. Nana had made sure of that. I decided Anthony needed a lesson, not in humiliation, not yet, but in helplessness. I wanted him to feel what it was like to grasp at power and realize it was nothing more than smoke slipping through his fingers. So I started small. I called the factory's head of operations, a sharp woman named Maria, who had been with Rossi Textiles for 20 years. She remembered me instantly. Isabella, she said warmly over the phone. It's been so long. Your grandmother adored you. She adored you too, I replied sincerely. Then I got down to business. Maria, I need to confirm something. Who signs your paychecks now? She hesitated. Technically, Anthony has been trying to insert himself. But according to our legal documents, you're still listed as the majority shareholder. Which means his signature is meaningless, I finished. She laughed a dry, knowing sound. That's what I thought. Honestly, Isabella, the staff is concerned. He walks around barking orders, but half the time he doesn't even understand how the machines work. Just yesterday, he told one of the technicians to turn up the textile output dial. There is no textile output dial. I pinched the bridge of my nose to keep from laughing out loud. Maria, consider this an order from the actual shareholder. Keep running things exactly as you always have. Pay no attention to Anthony's theatrics. And if he tries to interfere, call me directly. With pleasure, she said. That was step one. Step two came a week later, when Anthony decided to announce a new product launch on LinkedIn. He posted a graphic of flashy designs, bright, modern patterns he claimed were Rossi Textiles' next era. The problem? I recognized those exact patterns. They were part of a collection Nana had secured exclusive rights to years ago. And those rights were still locked under my name in the vault, which meant Anthony had just publicly announced he was selling something he didn't own. I couldn't have scripted it better. I forwarded the post to Maria with a simple note. Do not produce anything without my written approval. I'll handle this. Then I picked up the phone and called Anthony. He answered on the third ring, his voice smug. Bella, finally calling to congratulate me on becoming CEO. I almost laughed. Anthony, you're not the CEO. You inherited a building, not a company. There's a difference. Spare me, he scoffed. I've got workers reporting to me, new designs in production, and investors calling every day. Face it, you got a plane ticket. I got the future of Rossi Textiles. Oh, really? I said, keeping my voice cool. Because those new designs you posted? They're patented under my name. And if you try to produce a single yard of fabric without my consent, I'll see you in court so fast your LinkedIn profile picture won't even load. Silence. Then, finally, he barked out a laugh. You're bluffing. I let the pause hang just long enough before replying. Check the records. Better yet, ask Maria. I hung up before he could respond. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from him. We need to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat back in Nana's study, sipping Chianti, and savored the image of Anthony pacing in his office, sweating through his suit, realizing that the empire he thought he controlled was slipping through his hands. Because that was the thing about Anthony. He craved authority, but he had no idea how fragile his position really was. And now, with Marcus grounded and Vanessa drowning in tax nightmares, Anthony was next in line to break. But I wasn't going to break him with a single blow. No, that would have been too easy. I was going to let him unravel, thread by thread, until he finally came crawling to me for help. And that moment was coming sooner than he thought. Because while he was busy posting motivational quotes on LinkedIn, I was busy drafting contracts. Real contracts. Ones that would cut him off from suppliers, redirect shipping routes, and reassign key patents directly under my exclusive control. The Rossi Empire wasn't his to play with. It was mine to wield. And when I was finished, Anthony wouldn't just lose his title. He'd lose the illusion that he'd ever mattered at all. Anthony had always been dramatic, but I'd never seen him spiral quite like this. 2 weeks after our last phone call, his LinkedIn post shifted tone. Gone were the pompous CEO insights and copied leadership quotes. Instead, his feed became oddly defensive, long-winded posts about detractors, vague references to legal confusion, and even a half-hearted rant about family politics interfering with progress. To the casual reader, it might have looked like business stress, but I knew the truth. His kingdom was already cracking. Maria kept me updated almost daily. He storms into the factory and gives orders, she said, her voice carrying both amusement and exasperation. But when the staff ignores him, he just shouts louder. Yesterday, he tried to call a meeting with suppliers. They refused to attend until you confirmed it. I couldn't help but laugh. And what did he do? He sulked in his office for 3 hours. Then he posted something on LinkedIn about how true leaders suffer in silence. If I didn't know better, I'd think this was all a comedy routine. But here's where things got interesting. Anthony wasn't the only one noticing the cracks. Outsiders were, too. One evening, Lorenzo handed me a sleek black envelope delivered to the villa. Inside was a letter from a major fashion house in Milan. They'd noticed irregularities in Rossi Textiles' leadership structure and wanted to know who was really in charge. Their contracts with Nana had always been airtight, and they weren't about to gamble on a clueless wannabe CEO. That was the first ripple. The second came in the form of a phone call from a US-based supplier. The voice on the line was cautious but clear. We've been approached by Anthony, but frankly, we don't trust him. Isabella, are you running Rossi now? I smiled, even though no one could see me. Let's just say I'm handling things the way Nana intended. If you stick with me, your contracts are safe. There was a pause, then relief. That's all we needed to hear. Click. Another ally secured. Meanwhile, Anthony flailed harder. He started emailing investors with frantic proposals, promising expansions and profits he couldn't possibly deliver. He even hosted a press conference at the factory, complete with a cheap banner that read Rossi Textiles, a new era. Local reporters showed up, but the coverage was brutal. One article outright questioned his legitimacy, citing conflicting ownership records. I didn't even have to lift a finger for that one. His own arrogance did the work for me. But what really sealed it was the letter I received from Maria one rainy afternoon. It was short, handwritten, and direct. Isabella, the workers are behind you. We always knew Anthony wasn't fit. When you're ready to step forward, we'll follow. I stared at the note for a long time, my chest tight. These weren't just contracts and papers. These were people. People who'd worked under Nana's leadership for decades, who now looked to me for stability. They weren't asking for revenge or drama. They were asking for protection. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about humiliating my cousins anymore. This was about stepping into the role Nana had been grooming me for all along. Still, revenge and responsibility didn't have to be mutually exclusive. I drafted an internal memo, addressed directly to the factory staff. I kept it short. To all Rossi employees, I want you to know that your contracts, benefits, and futures are secure. I am reviewing all operations to ensure stability moving forward. Do not take directives from anyone not legally authorized. Your loyalty to Nana and her legacy is remembered and valued. Isabella Rossi. Maria distributed it discreetly. By the next day, whispers spread through the factory. Anthony's illusion of control shattered completely. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was him. You think you're clever, don't you? His voice was sharp, brittle, undermining me behind my back, turning the staff against me. I didn't turn them, I cut in calmly. They never believed in you to begin with. And as for undermining you, Anthony, there was nothing to undermine. You never had the power. He sputtered, furious, but I kept my tone even. This is bigger than you. Bigger than me, even. It's about Nana's empire. And right now, you're standing in the way of it surviving. For once, he didn't have a comeback. Just silence. Then, quietly, he muttered, "You'll regret this." I ended the call without replying. Later that night, I stood in the villa's study, surrounded by vault documents, contracts, and Nana's framed photographs. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what I was doing. This wasn't petty family drama anymore. This was war, corporate war, yes, but we're all the same. And here's the question I want to throw to you. If you were in my position, would you have let Anthony keep flailing until he destroyed himself, or would you have stepped in to protect the workers sooner? I wrestled with that choice, and I still wonder what others would have done. Drop your thoughts below. I really want to hear them. Because as satisfying as it was to see Anthony's fake throne crumble, I knew the next moves would be harder. Marcus was humiliated. Vanessa was scared. Anthony was cornered. And a cornered animal is always the most dangerous, which meant I had to be ready. The first confrontation came sooner than I expected. It wasn't Marcus, though I half expected him to storm the villa's gates with his entourage in tow, demanding the jet back. And it wasn't Anthony, though his increasingly desperate LinkedIn rants were bordering on full-blown meltdowns. It was Vanessa, the queen of image, the woman who had strutted into Nana's funeral in custom Chanel and smirked when I opened my wrinkled brown envelope. The cousin who thought her penthouse walls made her untouchable. She called me late one Friday night. Her voice, usually dripping with smugness, trembled at the edges. "Bella." I leaned back in Nana's leather chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. "Vanessa, to what do I owe the honor?" A sharp inhale. "Cut the act. You know why I'm calling." I smiled to myself. "Do I? They're saying I owe millions. In taxes, penalties, back fees I didn't even know existed. Bella, this isn't fair. Nana wanted me to have this place. You can't just..." "Vanessa," I cut in smoothly. "Nana wanted you to learn." That penthouse wasn't a gift, it was a test. When you're already failing. For a moment, she was silent. I could hear the clink of a glass on marble, the faint echo of her city view behind her. Then her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what it's like, Bella? To have people expect you to host, to entertain, to keep up appearances, and then to realize you can't even pay for the roof over your head. I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the laughter at the funeral. The way she leaned into Anthony's shoulder, smirking as if my brown envelope had sealed my irrelevance. So I kept my tone even. Yes, Vanessa. I do know what it's like. I know what it's like to feel small, to be underestimated, to be mocked by people who thought money made them superior. But the difference between you and me is, I learned how to live without it. You never did. She choked back something. Anger, maybe tears, maybe both. You think you're so righteous, but you don't understand what it's like to lose everything. I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see me. Don't I? Vanessa, I walked into that funeral with nothing. You walked out with millions in real estate. Who do you think has more to lose? The silence stretched so long I thought she might hang up. But then, in a whisper so quiet it almost didn't sound like her, she said, "Help me." And there it was, the first crack in her armor. I let the moment hang before I answered. Why should I? Her voice sharpened again. Because we're family. Because Nana wouldn't want us tearing each other apart. I laughed, actually laughed. Family? You laughed at me, Vanessa. You mocked me for getting a plane ticket while you strutted off with marble floors and penthouse views. And now that you're drowning, you want me to throw you a life raft? Bella, please. The raw desperation in her voice almost surprised me. Almost. I leaned forward, my pen hovering over Nana's old ledger. Here's the thing, Vanessa. I'm not your savior, but I am your only chance at surviving this. So if you want my help, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to admit out loud that without me, you're nothing but a girl with expensive taste and empty pockets. Her sharp inhale echoed through the line. You're cruel. I smirked. No, I'm patient. And right now I'm giving you a choice. Swallow your pride or sink. She didn't respond. Not right away. I pictured her pacing across her penthouse floor, manicured nails digging into her palms, wrestling with a truth she'd never had to face before. Finally, she whispered, "Fine. I need you. Without you, I'm nothing." The satisfaction that bloomed in my chest was sharp and sweet. Nana would have been proud. "Good girl," I said softly. "I'll think about helping you. But understand this, Vanessa, you're on my time now. Not yours." I ended the call before she could reply. For a long time, I sat there in the quiet villa, the cicadas humming outside, the weight of her words settling into me. She needed me. The woman who'd sneered at my worthless plane ticket now saw me as her lifeline. And the best part? She didn't even realize this was just the beginning. Because Anthony's cracks were widening. Marcus was still grounded. And now Vanessa's mask had fallen, revealing the fragile girl underneath the Chanel. If I had any doubt before, it was gone now. Nana hadn't left me out of her fortune. She'd left me its heart. And my cousins, my greedy, spoiled cousins, were finally realizing it. But here's a question for you. If you were me, would you have helped Vanessa out of genuine family loyalty? Or would you do what I did? Let her squirm, let her sweat, until she learned the value of humility? Tell me in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how others would have handled that phone call. And while you're here, don't forget it takes me hours, days even, to weave these stories for you. If you're still listening, still hooked, maybe that means I'm doing something right. So do me a favor, hit subscribe. Don't be like my cousins, taking without giving back. Because trust me, the best is still to come. Anthony always thought he was cleverer than everyone else. Even as kids, he was the one who would cheat at Monopoly, pocketing extra bills from the bank and insisting he was just lucky. So I wasn't surprised when his downfall didn't come with quiet acceptance. It came with a desperate, clumsy attempt to claw back control. The signs started small. A new LinkedIn update, grandiose as ever. Rossi Textiles is moving into a bold future. Partnerships and expansions are already in progress. It was laughable, considering every supplier worth their salt had already rerouted their contracts through me. But it was what came next that raised eyebrows. Anthony scheduled a shareholders meeting at the factory, a meeting I wasn't invited to. Maria, bless her, slipped me the details. He's hired a PR team, she told me over the phone, her voice tinged with both amusement and concern. Some flashy consultants from New York. He's promising to restore confidence in Rossi leadership. Isabella, the man is drowning and trying to host a parade. I could picture it clearly. Anthony in his rented Armani, hair slicked back, pacing in front of investors who already knew he had no authority, desperately trying to convince them otherwise. A performance, nothing more. But what struck me wasn't his arrogance, it was his desperation. He knew the walls were closing in, and like a rat trapped in a corner, he was ready to gnaw through anything to escape. I couldn't let that meeting pass unchecked. So I flew back to New York. The jet, my jet, though Marcus hadn't fully grasped it yet, sat gleaming on the runway when I arrived. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus grounded, Vanessa drowning, Anthony posturing, and here I was stepping into Nana's legacy exactly as she'd intended. When I walked into the factory the next morning, the air was buzzing with false energy. A cheap banner hung from the rafters, Rossi Textiles, a bold future. Rows of folding chairs were filled with investors, employees. Even a few journalists Anthony had bribed to attend. And there he was, center stage, barking into a microphone. And with my leadership, Rossi Textiles will not just survive, but thrive. Expansion into new markets is imminent. Innovation will lead the way. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me walk in. The silence that followed was delicious. I didn't say a word. I simply strode down the center aisle, every eye following me, and took a seat in the front row. Lorenzo stood at the back, arms crossed, his presence like a shadow reminding everyone that I wasn't alone. Anthony stammered, trying to recover. And, of course, family unity has always been at the core of this company, which is why I'm thrilled to have my cousin Isabella joining us today. The lie hung in the air like smoke. I leaned back, arms folded, and let him sweat. He fumbled through the rest of his speech, words tripping over each other, investors whispering to each other with furrowed brows. Finally, he opened the floor for questions. That's when I stood. Anthony, I said, my voice carrying easily in the cavernous space. You've spoken at length about leadership, about innovation, about expansion, but there's just one problem, isn't there? His jaw tightened. And what problem would that be? I turned to face the audience. Anthony Rossi does not control Rossi Textiles. The patents, the contracts, the trust, all of it is under my legal authority. What he controls is the building. That's it. A hollow shell. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anthony's face turned crimson. That's a lie, he barked. She's trying to undermine me. Check the records, I said sharply, cutting him off. Every supplier, every client, every worker here already knows the truth. I am the rightful steward of this company, not him. The room erupted in whispers. Journalists scribbled furiously. Investors exchanged glances. Maria, standing off to the side, gave me the faintest nod. Anthony's composure cracked. You think you're better than me, he shouted, voice cracking. You think just because Nana liked you, you can swoop in and steal everything? You're nothing, Isabella. Nothing. The words echoed off the factory walls. For a moment, the entire room went still. I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. If I'm nothing, Anthony, why is every contract in my name? Why is every supplier ignoring your calls? Why is every employee looking to me for leadership instead of you? His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. Because Nana knew what we all know now, you were never meant to lead. And today everyone sees it. The investors didn't stay long after that. Neither did the PR team. Within an hour, the factory was empty except for Anthony, slumped in a chair, staring at the floor like a child who'd just been scolded in front of the class. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The humiliation had done the work for me. Later that evening, Vanessa called again. This time, her voice was tight with fury instead of desperation. What the hell did you do to him? To Anthony? I asked innocently. Nothing he didn't do to himself. You're tearing this family apart, Bella, she snapped. I smiled into the phone. No, Vanessa. I'm holding up a mirror. If you don't like what you see, that's on you. She hung up on me, but I knew something had shifted. For the first time, all three cousins understood what they were up against. Marcus grounded, Vanessa begging, Anthony dethroned. The masks were off. The gloves, too. And as I poured myself a glass of wine that night, watching the city lights flicker beyond the villa windows, I knew the final act was coming. They weren't just my cousins anymore. They were opponents, and I had no intention of losing. The storm had broken. Marcus was grounded, sulking in Miami, his so-called celebrity jet life reduced to Uber rides and awkward excuses. Vanessa was dangling on the edge of eviction, her penthouse bleeding money faster than she could post her curated Instagram photos. And Anthony. Well, Anthony had been exposed in front of every investor and journalist who mattered. His name was no longer whispered with respect, but with ridicule. And me, I was the eye of the storm. It felt strange, stepping into the role Nana had quietly built for me. I wasn't a child anymore, sneaking chocolate from her kitchen, or learning how to roll pasta dough, just thin enough. I was the woman she'd chosen to guard her empire, the one person she trusted to carry her legacy forward without corrupting it. But the empire wasn't truly mine yet. Not entirely. My cousins still clung to their scraps, refusing to admit defeat. So the final step wasn't destruction, it was reclamation. It began with Vanessa. Her calls became more frequent, her tone alternating between rage and pleading. They're threatening to foreclose, she admitted one night, her voice brittle. The taxes, the debts. I don't have the money. Bella, please, just buy the place from me. You can afford it. And there it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. I could, I said softly, but only on my terms. Sign over the penthouse, and I'll settle the debts. You'll walk away clean, but with nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't bargain. For once in her life, Vanessa simply whispered, fine. The papers were signed within a week. The penthouse was mine. Marcus was next. His tantrums had grown legendary at the airfield, shouting at staff, threatening lawsuits, even trying to bribe mechanics to let the jet fly. But the invoices had stacked too high, and the truth was undeniable. Without me, the jet was useless. So I called him. Marcus, I said calmly, the jet doesn't fly without me. You know it. I know it. So here's my offer. Hand over your claim, and I'll let you keep the villa in Miami. Otherwise, you'll lose both. He raged, of course, called me every name under the sun. But by the end of the week, his signature was on the documents. The jet was mine. That left Anthony. He was the hardest. Not because he had leverage, he didn't, but because his pride was a fortress, crumbling but still defiant. He refused to answer my calls. He ignored emails, letters, even Lorenzo's visits. It was Maria who finally broke through. He's drinking, she told me quietly over the phone. He sits in that office all night, staring at the factory floor. Isabella, I don't think he knows who he is without it. So I went to him. The factory was quiet when I arrived, the hum of machines replaced by the soft echo of my footsteps. I found Anthony in the office, slumped in a chair, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the desk. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching him. The cousin who had once strutted like a king now looked like a boy who'd lost his toy. Anthony, I said softly. His head jerked up, eyes bloodshot. Come to gloat. No, I said. I came to offer you peace. He laughed bitterly. Peace? After everything you've done. I stepped closer, resting a hand on the desk. Everything I've done? Anthony, I didn't steal this from you. I protected it from you. From all of you. Nana trusted me because she knew you weren't ready. And deep down, you know it too. He didn't reply. He just stared at the bottle, jaw tight. So I slid a folder across the desk. Sign over your claim. Walk away. I'll give you a stipend. Enough to live comfortably. To start over. But you will not touch this factory again. His hands shook as he opened the folder. His eyes scanned the pages. Then, slowly, he reached for the pen. When the ink dried, I felt something inside me settle. The empire was mine. Not stolen. Not inherited. Earned. In the weeks that followed, I moved quickly. Contracts were restructured. Suppliers reassured. Employees secured. The Rossi name, once a punchline thanks to my cousin's arrogance, began to carry weight again. The penthouse was rented to a Milanese designer who adored its marble floors. The jet was leased out to a private firm, its profits flowing steadily into the trust. The factory, Nana's pride, thrummed with life, producing textiles that found their way onto Paris runways and New York storefronts. And my cousins? Marcus disappeared into the Miami nightlife, a shadow of his former influencer self. Vanessa fled to California, clinging to whatever social scraps she could find. Anthony, well, I gave him enough to keep a roof over his head, but not enough to buy another crown. Last I heard, he was teaching business strategy seminars online. It would have been easy to hate them forever, to cut them off completely, but I didn't. I set boundaries, yes, but I didn't destroy them, because in the end, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about proving that legacy isn't measured in marble floors or flashy jets, but in strength, patience, and integrity. On the anniversary of Nana's passing, I lit a candle in the villa's study. I poured a glass of her favorite Chianti and sat by the window, looking out at the Tuscan hills she'd loved so much. I did it, Nana, I whispered. They laughed at me. They mocked me. But I did it. Your empire is safe. The wind rustled the olive trees outside, and for a moment I swore I could hear her laugh, the warm, rich sound that had filled my childhood. And in that moment, I knew the war was over. Not with fire, not with blood, but with quiet triumph. I wasn't just the girl with the brown envelope anymore. I was the heir, the leader, the legacy. And as I closed my eyes, I realized something else. Revenge is sweet, but justice? Justice lasts forever.